It's 2 p.m. Friday, March. No echo now. Okay, 2 p.m. Friday, March 13th. Oh yeah, I hope that's not a bad sign. I call the meeting of the Land Use Working Group to order. First is roll calls of the who's here if you have a quorum. Rob Almeida can't make it. Keith Bergman, present. Paul Böhm, present. Matt Bover, here. Mary Hartman, here. Judy Long, here. Is Tracy online?
I don't here.
Okay. Tracy Moran is not here. Mark Martinez, not here. Linda Miller,
Here.
Glenn Weber here. We have a quorum. So I would, before we go to public comment, make a statement with just summarizing a few things from the last meeting and some of the observations. So give me the wrong glasses. At the last Land Use Working Group meeting on February 20th, we received a public comment questioning whether the Land Use Working Group and its subgroups complied with public meeting law regarding the structure of the agendas. I consulted with the town and town council and received feedback that we did not violate public meeting law. Please understand that as volunteers, we rely on the advice we receive from town. Nevertheless, we will aim to improve our agendas going forward. Please understand that given the large number of properties the group is potentially discussing at any meeting, and by the way, today we have over 100 properties on an Excel spreadsheet, listing all of them would not make the agendas readable. I would also advise that meeting packages with more information are published on the Land Use Working Group website, similar to what other committees are doing. At our last meeting, we heard that one of our subgroups potentially used a shared document while drafting their report. For the members of the Land Use Working Group, I want to point out that when you need to establish a document review process between multiple committee members, please consult with the town about what is allowed and how to manage the review process in compliance with open meeting law. Just going forward, if you're just make sure we are following the rules there. Separate from the open meeting law points I just made, I would like to take this time to clarify the role of the Land Use Working Group. The Land Use Working Group is not a decision-making body. It advises the select board about general options the town could potentially take to address property challenges. In addition, I understand that some members of the public raised frustration that the Land Use Working Group did not hold public input sessions and workshops during phase one. I'm absolutely in agreement that the public input is essential. I would like to point out that phase one was intended to bring, in quote, order to the chaos. And that until recently, there have not been very concrete options to present or discuss with the public in a structured way. Now, with the conclusion of phase one, we have an assessment of the town's needs and potential options on the table. This comes after the group reviewed in nearly 50 public meetings over 9 months, a massive amount of information to bring structure to a multi-dimensional problem. The phase one report is not the end. It is the beginning of a multi-year community process. The work of the Land Use Working Group will conclude in July 2026. And I'm sure that if the town elects to continue one of all of the different working streams, there will be plenty of public involvement, which, by the way, is explicitly recommended in the phase one report. So with that, I would like to open it to public comments. And again, the structure we do it, the section for public comment is for things that are not on the agenda. So if you have comments for example, for the Ag Committee presentation, you have the chance to provide your comments at the end of the presentation at that agenda item. So I would invite public comments for things that are not on the agenda, please limit your time to 2 minutes. And please identify yourself with full address when you do so. So any public comments? Tanya.
Thank you. Tanya Gable, 62 Prescott Road. I'm going to be quick. I know a lot of people who want to make comments. I don't know, it maybe during the agenda item. I disagree with town council or whoever advised you that there is no public comment, no open meeting, no issue with the agenda formations. And you and I had a discussion too. The town council does not decide what is or is not a violation, and that only the attorney general's office is the final arbiter of those. The agendas were not specific. They made statements like pros and cons and matrices. You mentioned to me that yes, there are 135 properties and it's hard to list, and therefore there are exceptions when there is too many things not to have to list them. But with the specific issues discussed, actually, I thought about this after our conversation. There wasn't always 135 properties in question. For example, if the sale of some properties were considered, it could just say sale of this property, or for the public works building, it could say this, limit the 9 options. Also, the agendas also did not specify the purpose of those matrices and pros and cons. It did not say where to put the public works building. It did not say what buildings, town buildings to sell. And that's another detail that's missing. Specifically with the Peter Springfield's site visit agenda, this is almost more dangerous than not saying anything. It says the wastewater treatment plant. And I remember seeing that agenda and not going because I thought people were just going to tour the wastewater treatment plant in terms of what shape it was or wasn't in. Then we find out that it's actually the field that's mostly being discussed. And this is practical considerations, because for one thing, it does cause health issues sometimes, as it did with me. But also in terms of gathering enough public input before you put together the pieces of your puzzle and create the order out of chaos, it's important to gather enough information from the public to guide this grouping of plans and approaches. And which is also in your charge, which I know some of you have already acknowledged. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes.
Brian Windmiller, 65 Arrowhead Road. And before I begin, Mr. Chair or committee, I just have a procedural question. So there are several people here who are from Zoo New England, an organization I'm recently retired from, still work part-time for, but who have very strong nexus to one of the properties here. They are not Concord Town residents. Are they allowed to speak? If not, I'll speak on their behalf.
What's our typical procedure for non-town residents?
I think I would leave that up to the chairs.
Yeah, given that we have a huge amount of town citizens here, I think I would prefer to limit it to town citizens. Yeah.
Okay, if I may then take a little bit of their share of perspective time, because also one of the people here is Susan Erickson, who was a very long time Concord teacher, and she also has material that she wished to speak about. So
I would like to limit it really to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are not getting through.
Yeah, I'll do my best, and I will also, along with Zoo New England, will be submitting these comments in writing. So I want to say first to this committee, thank you. I was an NRC member for 6 years. I recognize how difficult it is to do this job, this volunteer basis. And I think that the draft report that you all put together has a lot of really excellent information and analysis in it. I'm disturbed, particularly as I am for 34 years a near neighbor of the Peter Springfield site that is one of the primary sites of consideration for new DPW facility. And more than that, for more than 20 years, I instituted and have mostly directed a program, an endangered species conservation program, working with the restoration and recovery of One of the most,
So are we talking about the fields that are on agenda item 4?
the field, this is not an agricultural issue. That was an agricultural, that was an agricultural comment. I'm not commenting about agriculture.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. So I have worked with many colleagues, now at Zoo New England, on the recovery and restoration of Blanding's turtles at Peter Spring Field. More than 4,000 Concord school students over 17 years, Concord and Carlisle, the 4,000, more than half of those Concord students have worked directly hands-on in helping the recovery of this, one of the best known rare species populations in the nation. That effort that Zoo New England now undertakes was recognized in 2023 with an association of zoos and aquariums North American Best Conservation Project of the Year among more than 240 US, Canadian, and Mexican zoos. And in this report, in the executive summary, the drafters of this report state that environmental constraints are just one of 6 minor considerations when looking at all the sites. In analyzing what you call the 509 Bedford Street site, but which actually, as you say in the report, the place that you are looking at specifically for the construction of the new facilities are what we know in the neighborhood as the Peter Spring Field, lots 40W and 40R. All that you say about environmental constraints is the agricultural use of Bedford Street lots 40W and 40R, which will be addressed later. Quote, and the recent introduction of endangered species to the southern portion of this site should be reviewed for environmental concerns and potential mitigation. So you relegate the environmental concerns to apparently what this report, the drafters of this report, put down as a recent introduction of this species to just a portion of the site. We will present maps showing not only the Blanding's turtles use the entirety of the site, but recent introduction. Whoever drafted this report, with due respect, in less than 5 minutes of time on Google or an AI, would have realized that that is absolute nonsense. Here are just a few published papers. 1854, August 18th, from the Diary of Henry David Thoreau, describing his encountering of a Blanding's turtle, which is now in the permanent collection of Harvard's Museum of Comparative Zoology at Peters Spring. 1911, another record of a Blanding's turtle that's in the same museum from directly across the river. A published paper on a long-term study of Blanding's turtles at Great Meadows from 1971 to 1973. Another published paper on the nesting ecology, nesting exactly in lots 40W and 40R in the early 1980s. So I'm not as young as I used to be, but it's hard for you guys to imagine that I put Blanding's turtles in that area in 1854. Nor likely did Henry David Thoreau, and they used the entirety of the site, and constructing a DPW facility with all of its vehicle storage lots, its parking spaces, its salt sheds and depots would be a massive danger to the recovery of this population, which is a nationwide known environmental success story. So
thank you.
Here is one of the babies that is being raised in the library right now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. We have.
Yes, and that.
So generally in town, we always have the rule that we avoid clapping. Just keep that in mind, similar to town meeting. So we have one raised hand online.
I just asked them to unmute.
Okay, Charles Harvey. Hello?
Okay, yes, I hear. Can you hear me? Aye.
Echo.
Mute your issue.
Okay, is that work?
You guys need to meet the owl or your computer, sir?
I think it's that computer. Can you press the leave button on it?
How about now? Yeah. Someone on your end must have their microphone on. Okay.
Let me try now.
Can you try now?
Now?
Sean?
Thank you.
We can hear you.
Now we can hear.
Now? Well.
I don't know where it's at. Hold on, some.
Any one of you here? No.
Hello?
For everyone's computers. No, because then that muted the sounds coming out of the owl. Everyone's computers are muted. That's connected in.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
So let's,
More comments from the room.
so in the meantime, any other comments from the room while we try to solve this? Please,
Right, sit there and stay there.
that's better for the owl to pick it up.
My name's Aiden Peterson, 253 Petersburg Road. I'd like to thank everybody else in this room for coming, because I rarely come to these, so I appreciate everybody online as well as here. I'll keep it to a minute. I was surprised to see 509 Bedford Street on a boxed list where the MCI Concord is not 100% within Concord's control, and other lists were determined to be not viable. You got down to two. Ripley and 509 Bedford. I think 509 Bedford should be ruled out and not viable for 4 reasons. One, you're close to the wildlife conservation limit. Number 2, you're in the proximity to neighborhoods. Number 3, you're gonna have incremental traffic on Route 62, either a small amount or a large amount. And number 4, if you're worried about the Walden Pond opposition to being at a landfill, I think you'd be equally concerned, if not more so, about the proximity opposition from the neighborhood to 509 Bedford Street. You have 8 streets with 140 homes that are not gonna like that location. And I haven't seen the spreadsheet, I'll be honest, to see what other places you've looked at. Ideally, I'd like to think about parcels along the corridor of Route 2. Something along the 12-acre parcel along Old Road to 90-acre corner. A parcel along Ertz Mill Road next to the Rotary. Just places I'm thinking of out loud, but some places that aren't so close to neighborhoods and a lot of people. And I think 140 households just aren't gonna like that location. I still realize you have a difficult job, I can appreciate that. And I wish you luck on choosing a location, I just hope it is not this particular one. So, thank you for the 2 minutes, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Then can we have someone else on Zoom?
Can we try someone else on Zoom to see if it is a problem on our end? So Erin, I think you have to,
Yeah, can you hear me?
perfect, so it's not,
Okay.
Second though, Charles is on the Zoom twice, and I think that's why we're getting an echo.
okay, Charles, you have to log out at least in one of your 2 devices. So Erin, just continue while he's doing that. Erin?
Yeah, hang on, she muted herself again.
Okay,
No.
okay, thank you. Yes, Erin Shara, 528 Old Bedford Road in Concord. And I would also like to strongly argue against paving or developing that Peter Springfield in any way. I live fairly close to there, and I used to live almost directly across from there. And I have seen the Blanding turtles myself in that field. And so I know that Brian's work and all of the other people in that room who have worked so hard to keep those turtles alive, that they're doing great work, and it's helping. I also, if I'm not mistaken, there's a vernal pool at the edge of that property, which is very much alive with all sorts of beings in the spring. And it would be a real shame to disrupt that. There's also a fairly large stand of milkweed in that field, and I have seen monarch butterfly eggs on that milkweed. So it's a real hotspot of biodiversity, and it's multi-use as an agricultural field. I honestly think it's one of the treasures of the town. And the fact that it abuts the National Wildlife Refuge just makes it, I think, even more important of a parcel to not develop. And I understand that the town has some logistical constraints, but I just have to hope that there is another site that the town buildings could be placed on. And another thing about that particular spot is that that road already gets very backed up around rush hours. There's a lot of traffic waiting to turn onto Monument Street. And I've waited 10 or 15 minutes in traffic there. So to add a municipal building and the accompanying traffic to that part of town, I think is unwise just for traffic use. And so I'm strongly opposed to the development of that field for all of the reasons stated.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's try Charles again.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's working now. It must have been on my end.
Wonderful.
So I'll keep this brief and try not to literally echo all my thoughts that echo what we've already heard. I just want to, well, first I live on 123 Peter Spring Road, which is very close, abuts the Peter Spring farm field. It's an important open space in our neighborhood for everyone in the neighborhood, and I think for a lot of people from other parts of Concord and even outside of Concord. The Reformatory Branch Trail separates it from the sewage treatment plant. It's also close to a minerotrophic taifa-dominated wetland, which is home to a lot of wildlife. So I'll finish by just saying I'm kind of worried or was concerned when I saw how this was going. It's identified as 509 Bedford Road, which is something that I have never heard of, having lived here for 20 years, and no one would know it by that name. It doesn't even, doesn't even touch Bedford Road. And that makes me a little concerned that we're not balancing the different issues here. So as a resident of Concord, of course, I would like whatever benefits I may get from a better police station. I'm concerned about the cost of rebuilding it. But the other part of the equation is, what do we lose by developing a particular parcel of land? So I just want to encourage the town to carefully consider that, because this land has a tremendous amount of value to the neighborhood and beyond the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more in the queue, I think. Sarah?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So, I live at 21 Arrowhead Road, and I don't want to echo all the comments have been made, but I would like to just leave an observation, which I believe, part of which was just stated. If you go to the field at any time of year, you will see people there. They're walking, they're skiing, they're enjoying nature in one of the most beautiful open spaces that we have in Concord. We have many protected woodlands in Concord, and that is wonderful as well. But there's nothing like going out into a field, being able to see other people from the town, to say hello, people walking their dogs, people running, seeing the kids from the high school doing their cross country. And this is a precious space. And I wanted to emphasize that to everyone in this room. It is for so many reasons. And it's part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think the last person is Jen.
Muting myself. Yeah, I'm not to just echoing what everyone else said, and for the reasons for what people just said, we need to refer to this as Peter Spring Farm Field from now on. Your own maps, Concord Works maps for the Reformatory Branch Trail, of which this is a very important part, refer to it as Peter Spring Farm Field. So I suggest that any further discussion refers to it that way so that people know what we're talking about. So all these unique aspects that other people have just spoken to don't get lost in the discussion. I think if we stick to that name, we get a clearer sense of the parcel of land we're talking to, and that is the name on your own maps. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, no other comments right now. Is it also for the, because we have these properties on the agenda under 4 again, so I'll just try to. One more, please. 2 minutes.
Mark Hanson, I live at 340 Holden Wood Road. I'm a member of the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee to the Select Board. We've been doing this for 10 years, working with this field, with Hutchins Farm, which is organic. It maintains a very healthy habitat for pollinators, native pollinators, including the monarch butterfly. But there's a number of them. The diversity and population of native pollinators has been declining. Keeping this field will help us reverse that trend. Thank you.
Thank you. That was quick. Thank you for that. So, with that, I would like to move to the.
I'd like to ask a procedural question.
Yes.
Keith Bergman, here representing the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. Just procedurally, at what point, Mr. Chair, would this full land use working group be in a position to remove the offending property from our list for consideration for future site for public work, so that we can just. I'm hearing very clearly the concern of the not only the residents but those who across the eons honor this particular piece of property and respectful of that work. I'm very respectful of the work that each of the subcommittees has done as volunteers, going through voluminous information and doing the best that volunteers can do to present information to town officials and to our fellow voters.
Yeah.
And when we get it wrong as a draft, and clearly come to that conclusion, I think it would be helpful for our process as we proceed to take as an early vote as we can to remove 509 Bedford Street as an identified option for Concord Public Works.
So in phase 2, one of the first steps we have is reconcile the different work groups results. Also the feedback we got so far from different constituencies, also including Select Board, FinCom. Today, any impact we have, and then they bring the reconciliation back to say, okay, where are the remaining main properties that remain on the list? So we had today kind of a start of a reconciliation process. Potentially, we have it on the agenda, but given the time, I don't think we'll get there.
I just want to make sure we don't want to foul of open meeting law by voting on something that's not on our agenda, but would like to do so at the earliest opportunity.
So, and when we do that, I think the exercise will be to have on the main properties, and these are one of them, a short, perhaps also long discussion about the pros and cons of what we learned, and then either take it off or leave it off. That's part of the reconciliation process. Yeah.
I think it would be appropriate to consider that motion, not at this meeting, but as part of the.
Yeah, that's
part of the agenda. To discuss the
agenda,
whether motion for the next meeting would be in order. Put it on the agenda, then.
And
start the process.
And these is on several of these properties. There are a lot of properties that we're under consideration and where we have to come to a point to say, yes, we agree it's this, or we disagree it's that, and get to that point. That's at least on 36 properties that are on the list. Plus, there's a long list of others where we might have to think what needs to be done.
I think to Keith's question, I think we should start that triage today so that the subsequent meetings we can.
And if there can emerge from comments from the members that appears to be a consensus to walk away from 509 as an option, I think the sooner we send that signal to the community, the better. For everyone concerned, and but we do have to comply with the open meeting law. It's not specifically on the
Yes.
agenda.
I can't do it today.
Okay, all right. Next agenda item, approval of minutes. What is the meeting package? I hope everyone read it. Any comments?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion?
Do we have any members on?
No one online. You can do it, yeah. So everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Now. You wanna get on the table? Ag committee.
Oh, Brian.
Brian? Oh, over there. Please.
Okay, in common with a lot of people, I'm here to persuade you to remove this particular parcel from consideration. But in doing so, I want to explain some unique things about that parcel. But before I do that, I would like to mention a couple issues about protecting farmland in general. I think Concord community have been consistent over a long period of time in their valuing of protecting farmland. Farmland lost is effectively farmland lost forever, at least until the next round of glaciers sweeps the area. Unique among the many pressures facing area farms, of which there are many, loss of farmland is uniquely existential. You're foreclosing on all future farms when you get rid of farmland. Although Concord has done a good job relative to other neighboring communities in preserving farmland. A significant percentage of that farmland is useful not for crops, but solely for pasture or for hay fields because of physical characteristics of the field or the steepness. In addition, a significant percentage of preserved farmland in Concord is what farmers call river bottom land, but which we all know as floodplain, which can't really be developed, so there's no development pressure. Now, Peter Springfield has potential for lots of different. It's well drained, it's uniform, it's flat. Peter Springfield. So I didn't really introduce myself. My name is Brian Kramer. I'm 792 Monument Street. I've managed Hutchins Farm for 21 years. I've farmed Peter Springfield for 21 years. Hutchins Farm has farmed it since 1996. Prior to that, it was farmed by Joe Palumbo. And it's basically been continuously farmed for centuries. Okay, so Hutchins Farm is often considered to be in the town report. Hutchins Farm is considered to be prime farmland, but it's not. Hutchins Farm was hay fields. This field has been continuously farmed during the entire period, growing crops. It's a unique field. It's 800 by 800, about 14.5 acres. That's the part that we farm. Our initial agreement with the town meant that we set aside 5 acres to the north, in between the Reformatory Branch Trail and the main part of the field, as nesting habitat for Blanding's turtles. We still communicate every season with these folks, so that when they identify nesting sites and they protect them, we work around them, because the turtles do not stay where they're told to stay. So the field is large, contiguous, very conducive to agriculture activities, has a sandy texture, virtually no rocks, making extremely tractable. I don't know if that's the right word, it's the word I'm using. It's resilient in a way that clay soils are not. Pretty much all of the equipment that we use there works as it's designed to work in that field. Whereas at Hutchins Farm, where it's a patchwork of rocky, fields and bottomland and hill, rocky slopes. You know, we're constantly breaking stuff and it's very rough on equipment as well as, people. The well-drained soil allows for the earliest spring cultivation, continued cultivation when flooding renders river bottom lands inaccessible, allowing farms to continue working and producing during a wide range of weather conditions. And one of the most important things about that field is the adjacent irrigation pond. Because it is so well drained, without a ready source of irrigation, it would be marginally useful. With the pond there, it is just from my perspective, a gem. So a couple other things, I mean, we mentioned the turtles, recreation and open space, people mention that. There's no time that I go there that there's not 10 people walking, well, 5 people walking around the fields. Sometimes to my annoyance, because so this is kind of another observation I have. People are all, you know, talking about the tech ag of the future and technology. This is the only field I have experience with that would readily support kind of high-tech farming with robotics and electric eyes and AI, because that stuff requires a uniform, level, flat interface with the field. Not that I plan on doing any of that stuff. But in any case, it's been a very productive field for us, and that's basically all I have.
Thank you, and I can only recommend reading this book. I'm halfway through. Talking about
Who wrote that?
Brian Donoghue. It's really, from my read, it seems to be the Bible of farm fields in Concord. So you learn a lot about the sandy and not so sandy fields and how water plays a role and how this all evolved. So it's unfounded, the only word, only one from the public library. So I better read fast.
Really?
I better read fast. So just before I go, the two we do is first questions from the working group members and then broader. So I think that from my perspective, just to frame this, I feel these are two, probably 40B, 40W and 40R Bedford Road. You're talking about 21 acres in total. It appears that this is the center of many conflicting interests coming together on a very, very small area. So just like in our work, and when we come to the point to deliberate and make a decision, we have to look at that. Okay, these are agricultural use, there's historic relevance, there's the blending turtle relevance. It's actually zoned as a residential B area, just so that everyone knows how this thing is zoned. So it's already zoned as a residential area, although it's used as an agricultural field. It has some potential housing implications, 21 acres for housing, and has a lot of financial implications if that would be at a certain point developed. So that's the thing a select board or everyone has to think about, because that is right there about $30 million in value and $2.5 million of annual tax revenue if you would think about that. So we have to think about really the complexity of this, but in good old Concord fashion, we have one central point where all the different things come together, and these are obviously the 40W and 40R Bedford Road things, properties. And we have to see us as stewards of the land and the stewards of the history, and we have to consider all aspects of this field. So with that, I just want to open it up to the rest of the group here. Questions?
I agree with all that, but I have a question. So this is town-owned land?
Yeah, as far as I understand, yeah.
And so the farming is done under what kind of agreement with the town?
It's a licensing agreement. Traditionally licensing agreements last 3 years. There was a period of time when the they narrowed this particular parcel's licensing agreement to 1 year, but since then it has actually gone back to 3.
It's 1 year right now.
Oh, it is 1 year.
1 year, it renews every December,
Okay.
and the income is $350 a year.
Yes, it's a decadent part. I'm willing to just pay a lot, not millions like you were
The
talking.
renewal process for people kind of manager, what approval?
I deal with Delia K. The renewal process and the roll over of these agreements is basically done. I don't think that there's been a farmer who opted out without, well, I mean, they haven't taken it away from it.
I'm curious about the process, so it's with natural resource.
It's with natural resource, yeah.
I have a follow-on question. So Brian, what I'm thinking now is there any way that you're aware of, I don't know if you know, to put this under some kind of permanent restriction to?
I mean,
keep it
there's something called an APR. So
Yeah.
Hutchins Farm is under an APR.
Right.
I don't know how that would work with town-owned land. I mean, I'm sure there is town-owned land that's under an APR as well. Yeah, I don't know the mechanism.
Okay.
Normally, it has to do with, getting an APR put on a property has to do with providing some sort of compensation to the owner of the property.
Some revenue sharing. Okay.
In exchange for these, this future restriction on being able to divide the property or develop it in any way.
What you didn't mention when you were introducing yourself is that you're also the chair of the Ag Committee.
Oh, that's right. I'm
Right,
sorry.
and there are several,
I'm nervous.
several members of the Ag Committee in the audience, so maybe
Sure.
this is something that, and the Ag Committee should, I will help you look into that. if you're
Yes,
interested.
that's kind of the dream. The development pressure on that field has been made clear to us from, really from the get-go, that at some point the town may need to, for instance, expand the wastewater treatment facility or whatever.
Mhm, mhm.
And at some point, probably about 10 years ago, they did dig a test well right in the middle of the field, which we occasionally hit with the tractor.
Whoops.
Not me.
Any other questions from the group? Yeah.
Just one question, which has to do with, 509 Bedford Street, which is the wastewater treatment
Right.
plant. So the comments that we've heard, do they extend across the street to the properties, the various parcels around the wastewater treatment plant, or are we really just talking about, the two parcels, 40W and 40R?
From an agricultural perspective, I would say, I mean, the stuff across, that's part of the wastewater treatment facility proper is beyond my purview. I've never even been over there. I've been 21 years. I've never glanced over.
Thank you.
And I would open it to you.
Dan Schmidt, co-chair of the Ag Committee. It's just, we've been dealing with different challenges in town with agriculture, as far as trying to find places for people potentially to live. But it's just such a central part of this town, the open space. And as Brian said, once it's gone, it's gone. But it's like, on one hand, the town loves the natural open feel of the town. But if you start taking away land that is in that category, it really affects the overall, reason why a lot of people live in this town and why there's the option for agriculture for Brian's farm and the farm I work on. And so I think it's just, more important than just the one particular piece of property. But thanks.
Thank you. Any other?
Hey. See next.
No, okay.
So just a couple of points. So first in answer to
Your
your
name and street again.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian Miller, 65 Arrowhead Road. In answer to your point, because it seemed to a more general question than agriculture only, Atlantic turtles do nest on 509 Bedford Street. The wastewater treatment plant facility will show you that in map GIS stuff that we'll give you. Not nearly as often as they nest in the field, but they do occasionally, and more importantly, the Blandings turtles need to move through that site when they go between Great Meadows and the nesting area. So they use that site very extensively. I also wanted to point out, as Brian mentioned, Hutchins took over the lease of this field in 1996. I was on the NRC at that point. And I apologize, Brian, because I was probably the person who saddled you with the 5 acres. That's maintained as Blandings turtle nesting habitat. This turtle bubbles aside. Few of the Blandings turtles come to these town meetings. So as far as I'm aware, they were unaware that those 5 acres was where they were supposed to go. So as it turns out, they primarily nest not in those 5 acres, they nest in the remainder of the field. Brian and the staff at Hutchins have been incredible, working with us and helping us in every regard. And we're really grateful to them. And also, because of the restrictions that we had on the 5 acres for nesting habitat, Brian and his staff had to maintain that kind of wastefully as a fairly trashy area that maybe the turtles would nest in, but had no real ecological or agricultural value. And we worked with Brian and other staff at Hutchins, and starting in 2016, we got a small grant from the Concord Garden Club and planted that area into what is now the most floristically, the most botanically diverse meadow habitat in Concord. We've recorded more than 120 species of plants on those 5 acres, and it is probably the most pollinator-rich piece of property in Concord. And one final bit that was addressed by the letter that Polly Reeves sent from CLCT to this committee is that, and you mentioned it briefly, Mr. Chair, that I live on Arrowhead Road, which faces directly towards the field. It's called Arrowhead Road because this field is famous for the fact that it is a treasure trove of Native American artifacts. A resident of the area some 30 years ago found a 10,000-year-old Paleo-Indian spear point right nearby. So it has tremendous archaeological value as well.
Yeah, and you just generally want to be very careful when referring to this in public settings because treasure hunters might show up.
They do all the time. Sure, if I may just disadmit this since I was saying to here are, if you just want to take a look, here are the actual nesting locations that we've recorded since 2003 or 2005.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a quick comment, if I may, to our large and passionate audience today. My name is Judith Grant. I'm the co-chair of this committee, and I can speak after a fairly long career in urban planning that when people show up and they're surprised about what you're talking about and alarmed, that means that procedurally we haven't done our work properly. So on behalf of the committee, I would like to say that you have all been very much heard today. I think all of the information has been clear, well received. I think many of us have children who have gone through the Blandings Turtle program. So all of you have been well heard. I also wanted to perhaps help or even reiterate comments about how decisions will be made going forward, because when we say things like phase 1 and phase 2, that may not have any meaning to you, even though it helps to guide our work. This committee, or this working group, I should say, we're not even really technically a committee. We're a working group. I think one of our challenges is we started out with an awfully lofty title, okay? The idea that we are a land use working group, and I think the select board started out with a bunch of really good questions, which is we have these parcels that are coming up, MCI and the Peabody School, and how best to think strategically about them. So that's where the idea germinated. And then we took well-meaning, well-intentioned volunteers who have worked pretty hard, albeit part-time, with not a lot of data. And our wonderful town staff don't have a lot of time or bandwidth to help us find data or even to do the kind of consulting studies that would be necessary to answer so many of the questions today. So just to sort of put that in context, we're really just gathering a sense of what the problems and opportunities are. So when you see a property that is near and dear to your hearts on a list, I can appreciate, I think our select board members and other members of the working group can appreciate that would cause alarm and get everybody to show up at the meeting and tell us how you feel. And absolutely timely, terrific, important. But we're not really going to be making any decisions. We are going to be passing this information along to the select board, and then the select board will be making decisions. So for example, side of the issue that I think is important to many of the people here, which is the public works facilities relocation potential. We have the police and fire building. We have some opportunities around more efficiently using municipal office spaces. And we're going to be handing that off to the select board to say, hey, so for example, the police and fire is we really need to upgrade these buildings. They're in worse shape than I thought driving by those buildings for 25 years, right? So we probably need to upgrade these. So police, select board, can we have a dedicated police and fire building committee? And can we have some money to hire some expert consultants to answer this? Ditto for municipal consolidation. And then in the context of public works, it's going to get rolled into the MCI planning questions. And as part of that ongoing process, how do we think about where we handle our public works needs anywhere in town? And there are still other options that may not have even been identified as part of the set, but this came up in the context of, in particular, the opportunities around MCI. So I hope that provides some reassurance. There will likely be other meetings where you guys want to show up again. Although, you know, as committee member Keith points out, we may also choose to make a recommendation out of this working group that the select board does not have this as an option in our list. I don't want to speak on behalf of the working group because we haven't had that conversation yet. But if this follows through to something more specific and something more realistic or likely, there will be many more kicks that we can for you guys. So I hope that helps at least clarify where we are in the process. And again, to thank you and assure you that all of your excellent commentary has been heard.
Can I just add to that? Thank you, Judith. That really helps a lot. I just want to add one thing, that at the end of the day, it really is going to be the people at town meeting that decide these things ultimately, because we're going to need zoning changes, maybe we're going to need money. So yes, this will get funneled into the select board, which maybe will prioritize some options, put together a timetable, recommend funding, but all that requires town meeting approval. So it's really you that will make that decision at the end of the day.
One last comment, please. As much as I all love you being at the meeting and hearing from you, I'd like to see if we can give you some comfort that you don't have to attend me for this purpose. I'm speaking as an individual, we'll deliberate on that, but it'd be nice if you could take some comfort in what we do next.
Yes, if I could. Well, it's our job to kick the can down to the road to the select board. My hope is that we will not kick 509 Bedford Street onto the select board, and that issue will come off the table here. So that's because we've got a lot of other stuff to that we will be bringing forward for decision. This one seems like a pretty easy decision for us to make and recognize that we've been shown the light. So
do you feel a trend here?
So I saw two more hands. I just want to recognize these two, and then would like to wrap this agenda item up.
One here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, these two, I saw two, these two hands, exactly. You first.
They come up to the table.
Yeah, please come up to the table so they can.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm not gonna echo what anyone else has said, so maybe just a little bit. So I think the discussion of this property on Bedford Street highlights two fundamental considerations that I have not heard and that I'd like to hear more about. And one is, I'll start with the easier one first. This group should be guided by the town's sustainability principles that were adopted by the select board in 2011. And two of those four principles really speak to why Bedford Road should remain in agricultural and habitat use, and those are reduce encroachment upon nature and meet human needs fairly and efficiently. So I think agriculture is certainly a human need. This is a great site for it. So these principles are based on the American Planning Association, and so I think it's something that should guide your decisions and choosing other sites. Secondly, at an early meeting of one of the subcommittees of this group I attended, and I made a public comment that, you know, a visit to the town buildings is often like the first exposure that any member of the public who's not from Concord has to the town. So it's important that the buildings be accessible, be representative of our values, and also be welcoming. I think this particular property does a great job. Unfortunately, it's not big enough for the whole town. But along those lines, Bedford Street is one of the gateways or major entrances to the town of Concord. So when people come into Concord through Route 62, they might pass by that road. And if that property is going to be developed for public works, you know, I don't think that's the first thing that people want to see when they come into Concord. They'd rather see, well, not maybe they don't care what they see, but Concord residents would like others to see, you know, farmland, open space, you know, residential. And so I think that is a major consideration. Keeping this property will maintain Concord values.
Thank you. And your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gail Heyer, 54 Nancy Road.
Okay, thank you. Then we have one last hand up. Tanya.
Yeah, thank you. I am 62 Prescott Road. I thank you everyone for your sensitivity to our comments and concerns. Just want to say that when if you do consider selling this land for development, that also will be probably a concern for the people who are concerned about its current use. And that some other surprises may have to do, not with this land, but with the selling of certain public buildings that, like Harvey Wheeler, et cetera, that we didn't know. So this is just a general, not well thought out comment that there is a lot of emphasis on financial matters. And maybe that should not necessarily be the primary objective in figuring things out. And as far as the matters eventually coming to town meeting, again, it's great that you are now going to be more open to public comment in a timely manner, because it will kind of creates what eventually goes to town meeting in the first place. But thank you very much, and thank you, Mary, for wanting to have the agricultural committee.
Thank you. With that, I would like to close this agenda item.
Good.
So, and move to agenda item number 5, discuss feedback from the select board and finance committee. So we presented phase 1 report goes at the select board, and then days couple of days later, and not right at the snowstorm last year, to the finance committee. I got the impression that we both, you were one online and one in person, that we got quite positive feedback with respect to the amount of analysis everyone did, and it was recognized that this group and the subgroups with close to 50 meetings in 8 months, with a lot of information, with a lot of support from town staff. We just got a little bit order in this message that I always use the example of puzzles. It was not just one box, but it was one box with a lot of puzzle pieces, but turned out there were several puzzle sets in that box. So we more or less laid out this right now as their puzzle pieces are sorted, the frame is more or less laid out, and there's still a lot of things that need to be plugged in. So I think one of the follow-up things is also Article 12 in the current town meeting warrant, which is asking for additional funding or follow-up work along the different working streams here. If you're looking at the questions where a lot of, okay, how much money is needed, what's the timeline on realization of this? We all, as you know, we worked on best guesstimates and order of magnitude numbers. For anything the town wants to move forward, a lot of these numbers, scenarios, considerations need to be much more drilled down. Let's take an example. Building a new fire headquarter in West Concord looks right now good on paper, but and we have an estimate what it might cost. But the devil is in the detail. We know the costs go up. We have also with current macro political and military activities, we probably have a continuing increase in cost in front of us for some of the projects. So we have to put more work behind it, and Article 12 is designed to ask a meeting for funding to work on these different work streams and get better data. So one of the things that came out specifically at the FinCom meeting, the last one, the hearing on Article 12, is I think it would be good for both the FinCom and the town meeting to understand what our position is to Article 12, given it is generated out of it. So as you know, we circulated a draft of a potential support statement to be issued. And I would like to just offer this generally as a discussion, what you have heard. And if we go that fast, Mary provided some edits to the initial draft. So
This is the edited.
Yeah. So generally, I would put anything you have from the group here is what did you hear on what feedback, informal or formal, so far for us, what we should consider, and B, then are we willing to
Can I interrupt
put
for a second?
yes.
Just for the people in the room, we're talking about an article that's gonna be at this town meeting that would authorize some spending to get some professional help with some of the assumptions that we've made already. We've done this, as Sven said, we're volunteers, we need professional help. So what we're talking about right now is what this committee's position would be on that article. But when you're in town meeting and it comes to a vote, we would really appreciate your support as well.
Yes.
Is this letter intended to go to FinCom?
This letter is intended to be in the briefing book. Yeah.
Okay.
The briefing, yeah.
I just want to reflect that the comments I heard at FinCom,
Yeah.
which may you want to add for the letter.
Yeah.
There's some specifics I think they were asking about. One was what the money was going to use for, not very specifically, but hiring consultants, et cetera, but that stays, it's the hiring consultants, the staff work, but it's, so I would try to add something of the money with the.
Yeah, so just in parallel.
Let me just add the comment. And then if we could add some specific examples. These are general, and maybe that's fine, but then, e.g., a certain study.
Yeah.
So the presenter, Mark Howell, is in the process of reworking the presentation on the article itself. This is not sponsored by us.
I know, and well,
Yeah.
some specifics in there.
So he will.
I saw Mark in the hallway earlier.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's not-
yes,
he's not-
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So just add
So there will be more
specifics on that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to talk about a timeline on this. That this would money, that the working group would like to be spent in 12 months or 18 months, just what is the urgency? Because there's, the only number here is 10+ years. And this is money over 10+ years, this is money we want. To get
Yes,
information
that's
over the next
very good.
12 to 18 months. Okay,
Yes.
so that kind of specific, and a little bit
Yeah.
more. Okay.
I think that's great.
I have 2 points to make. First is that,
I agree.
we should not be taking a position on the article, we should be taking a position on the motions. Because it's the motion, which sounded like it caught the finance committee by surprise, that the article, that the motion is going to request $600,000. The article doesn't give a number. I think for that kind of expense, I think there needs to be, as just more detail of what the scope of work's going to be. I dare say that by the time we're all on town meeting floor, we should be very certain that this committee has taken a vote in our work that follows through on our discussion with those attendants at this meeting today about 509.
You're right, but the printed article doesn't have a.
No, it's the
We're supporting
motion.
the motion.
No, we're not supporting, it's without meaning to support the article. What counts is that we would, if we chose to, take a position on the motion.
Yes.
And the select board's motion, assuming that the select board has signed on to $600,000, would be to support that, an appropriation of that amount for specific purposes. So I wouldn't be ready to take a vote on this without first knowing the select board supports 600,000. Which would be the motion, and what are they going to spend?
Where did we come up with 600,000? I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that amount. Is it that?
That was presented at the finance, by the chair of the select board to the finance committee.
What is the range? That number came out of the blue, or what's
No, they look at the three main work streams, look at what is already covered, for example, by ARPA money when you look at the MCI. And then that is, okay, what kind of studies, assessment, feasibilities you need to do in the different work streams. The biggest part in there is the fire and police area, because we are in a nutshell talking about potentially 3 buildings. So that needs a lot of work there. That is from the 600,000. Let me guess, probably 350 or so. And the remainder is then what needs to be done for public works and an assessment of the consolidation target, if that is feasible or not.
It's not to exceed.
Yeah.
600, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
Do we have a shopping list?
Well, it's the motion for 600,000.
I thought it was not to exceed.
You can borrow for not to exceed. If you appropriate $600,000, you're appropriating that, you're appropriating it. My concern is, and what came up at the hearing, is that there are lots of different funding sources to look at. I mean, some are MCI specific, some are previous, town ARPA funds. There's a scope of work that needs to be done to carry forward, I'd say collectively, the work of MCI Concord and the land use working group, because there's some overlap there. It would be helpful to know what are all of the available, to see in a simple chart, in a slide. What are the total amounts of money that would be available? Where does this $600,000 fit in? And what is the scope of the work that we can just show us how, for all of the things that need to be done, this 600,000 fits in with the other funds that
But
are.
for the purposes of a support letter, I don't think we need, for the purposes of the town voting on it, make sure Mark presenting it, perhaps, I don't think we need that level of accounting. We do need some sense, I think, of where the number came from.
I do.
Okay.
So,
well,
that's just me.
Okay,
So
we're,
you're saying you wouldn't sign a support letter
Unless I know what the 600,000, unless I know that the select board has voted to request $600,000 and supports it. Which I don't know yet.
Okay.
It sounded
Okay,
like.
so maybe we are
Sounded like-
doing that on Monday night.
Is
So
it-
maybe you want to table this until it's a suggestion, until we know the select board's position and better information on.
But then it's not getting in the briefing.
Yeah,
Oh,
deadline's Wednesday.
The other alternative is can we do a subject to? So,
Well, I'd say you do what you think you want to do. I'll abstain from the vote.
no, it's a reasonable request.
I think the select board by Monday, would hope that the select board would want to see the things that I just mentioned
So I think
before they vote on it.
one of the challenges here, I think, is that the intention for the use of the larger pot of money includes not just the things that the land use working group is recommending, but broader town planning, future land management strategy work. And so while we are able to speak to some component of the 600,000 or whatever figure that is, the other part, I think, is not necessarily earmarked, or it's not earmarked by this group. So would you be comfortable, Keith, with some modified language that suggests that the land use working group supports or envisions usage of, $100,000 to do a needs assessment for building and fire, for example, and a couple of other examples, but then also the land use working group recognizes that the town needs some flexibility moving forward in order to provide the expert consultant services around other related planning initiatives.
I think it's the wording of the article.
Yeah, but let me make it very.
Yeah, the article is municipal facilities planning, which sounds to me to be a broader stroke than land use working group and MCI Concord, and rather inclusive of all that might be done. So it's just, I think it's in the town's best interest to know as soon as we can, where does that $600,000 fit into the pantheon of funds that have been put in place to move it
The
forward?
way I see the question before us right now is, we've done some work. We've created some momentum. And in order to keep that momentum going, we know we need professional help. I don't know, I know exactly how some of that money would be spent, but I don't know how all it's gonna be spent until we get further down the road. So when I look at it from that broad perspective, I think, yes, I want this work to continue. I want to get the help we need. I want to clean up some of our assumptions, all the things we mentioned here, costs, assessments. We need help with community input, because we need professional help getting community input. So that's, I don't see our job as actually writing in detail how that's going to be spent. I see our job as saying, do we support the continuation of this work with professional help that's going to require funding from the town?
And I think that's the nature of the support letter.
Yes.
Keith,
Yes,
to your-
that's
to your
the nature of the
point,
support letter.
other bodies, like board and town, need
Yeah.
to know some more details.
Yeah.
And maybe how much of the 600,000 used by this effort versus other efforts, but that's a different.
My only point was where the motion. I mean, if we were only taking votes on, how do we feel about articles? And, a feel-good motion about, hey, I'm all in favor of municipal facilities planning that we've been spending a year doing. Great, I'm in support of that.
Right.
The article, the motion, what counts is we'll be asking for $600,000 or some amount that the select board approves goes forward with on Monday night.
Right.
For some, presumably for some scope that they will share with the public about what's gonna be spent. So, and I'd feel better knowing that the select board had done that.
Mary's point, this group is gonna be some part of that, well, yet to be determined. As far as the 600,000, the way Mark explained it, was a kind of a scaling versus what was needed MCI versus, it wasn't very specific, and maybe Mark is thinking of how to get them more specific, I don't know, but that's how it was explained.
Do we have more specifics as far as what we would spend that 600,000?
Could I just ask why do you need to vote today? Or why, and I apologize because the room was full, I was in the other room.
The publication.
The briefing book.
But so you want to include something in the briefing book?
That was the original
That
idea,
was
but you can make a decision not to do it and make a statement or
I think our input would be more meaningful if we were reacting with great enthusiasm for the plan that the select board was bringing forward with detail that we felt that we, were a part of.
would you feel better to say, we see what the final presentation, the final details are about how the 600,000 are done, but then we consider a potential statement of support for the town meeting, then we have a discussion after that. Yes.
I think we would do a disservice to try and precisely determine how much is allocated to any functions. I think that we don't have that information, and I would assume that it's going to be part of the process to actually figure out that information. I don't think the select board has it down to the, nickel and dime either. I also don't see that having something in the handout is that much different than having the town moderator get up at town meeting and say that this article is supported by the land use working group. So I think that we can say, but at this point, we're all in support of continuing this process going forward. We want to put a really general statement in, put a really general statement into the planning book, and if you otherwise just we can say the support at town meeting, but I don't want to spend a lot.
No one's gonna be looking in the book to see how we voted, that we're not, it hasn't been assigned to us or anything. And I think that what we should focus our mission on is being able to have our co-chairs take the microphone in their official capacity, sharing with the voters why succinctly and why we are supportive of the motion that's offered under this article, because I'm sure we will.
Right.
And that, I think in ours getting to that point is worth taking some time.
And given that our term is up in July, I'm not sure that, there may be questions of, about specifics that we put in that maybe aren't carried through if a different organizational structure moves forward.
Okay, so just one thing to look at, the co-chair.
Wait, you get.
Oh, sorry.
I just, if I could just finish, and I apologize if you heard this before, but a small group of us met just before this meeting. We have pulled together some additional information that will be presented to the select board on Monday. We're trying to crisp up the general scope of work that we're looking to move forward. It's not incredibly specific. Town meeting is, it's once a year that you have an opportunity to request funding. This is a fluid process where we're still moving through that process, but I think we put hopefully enough definition to the broad areas that we're looking to address, tying it to the work of this group. And we will present that to the select board Monday and then to the finance committee on Thursday. And we will continue to refine that presentation up until town meeting and provide as much specifics as we can, understanding where we are in the process. We have some work that we're just getting ready to launch, and it's just, it's a little bit of, or more of an art than a science of how you line all of this up for town meeting.
Yeah, that's very helpful, and that's more than we were told. We haven't been told anything at this meeting about what you're up to. Yeah,
Just
so that's all.
for the chairs to be able to stand up and support it, whether we do this or not, I think we need a vote.
Yeah.
A sense of, to support Article 12 or the article of the motion either. We need to take a vote today so they can be represented.
Well, the town meeting is
what town meeting?
down the road. We have another meeting before town meeting.
Okay, we can do it then, but
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do that. If you guys to stand up and represent the group, we have to take a vote.
I think let's do that next town meeting.
We will.
And then
Next
you
meeting.
can determine
Next
if we, yeah, okay,
And so the letter, we're not gonna do the letter for the Richmond one.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, one observation. I applaud you're all very intelligent people. It's wonderful to listen to. I hear a lot of different things kind of go in a circle, but I just wanted to say, I kind of feel like I'm on the outside. I'm gonna be going to the town meeting. I've read every single article there is. The town's looking for a lot of money. School's flat budget, it's flat, and that's 2/3 of the budget. See, 1/3 the town's looking for money. And every article in there, almost every article, is looking for some kind of money. So if you people wanna sell your Article 12, if you leave it too open, people are gonna say, I don't know where the money's going, I'm not gonna vote for that. And I realize you can't make it too specific either. You don't have the particulars. But you have to give enough for somebody like me to have confidence in you about what you want to do. I need to get a sense that you know where you're going, you have a feel of what you want to do. So it's worth it for me to invest in this because there are so many competing interests for the dollars. And I don't think the average Concordian has unlimited means. I mean, I know Lyman Street and a lot of other streets have got a lot of high-end dollars, but they're not gonna come to town meeting and say, I'll help you fund whatever you want. If I had it, I'd give it to you. I really would. I think there's a lot of great minds and a lot of great ideas here. But
Please come to more of our meetings.
if you can convince me of over, then you know.
But again, it's not our article.
Voice of reason.
It's not our.
It's not our article, just to be
Yeah,
clear.
so I mean, I just wanted to say that it's almost like shopping.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
residents are shopping, what can we get our money for? And never like this one, they say, wow, we want
We've
this.
got
this,
such a
this.
Okay,
So
all right.
thank you.
So anything else on a feedback you heard directly or indirectly from FinCom or select board?
We haven't discussed this article, but,
No, I mean, generally on our
Oh.
phase one report.
I have a,
oh,
on the town meeting article, would this advance, since the business we are in, basically, at least in our phase one, would there be a scope sufficient to move forward with, to be able to bring the municipal consolidation to a future, is that gonna be a future, future town meeting later this year, or is it gonna be next year?
That's up to, again, there's a lot of work to be done, and that's one of the purposes of this article.
Yeah.
To say, does it make sense to go to?
I mean, that particular scope should be of particular interest to us if we, if the full committee adopts a recommendation on municipal consolidation. And the town then needs to carry that out within a very short time frame. That's an excellent reason for us to support the article, knowing that that's.
Yeah, but similarly, you need for negotiations with MCI, you need to put more thoughts on some of the aspects for public works being located there. And that's also an own timeline, so, yeah.
So, just to answer Keith's question, the article is going to request funding for each of the three: public works, public safety, municipal facilities. And the municipal facilities consolidation, and that includes some work on surplus, if there are properties to be surplus, what would be gained from that? So it's different amounts of money for each of those buckets for different types of tasks, because we know we need a new public safety. We know there's something to be gained from municipal consolidation, but we're in different places with each of those things, so that's, yes, that's what that's what we're looking at.
All right. Oof. So, did we have this meeting until 3:30?
Yes, what's the plan?
So perhaps we have to just talk about the general methodology and work plans for phase two, and then pick over the next two agenda items to the next meeting, potentially. Although I would have been keen to spend some time on.
Just on number 8, since earlier discussion was somewhat vague, if we're going to take a property off the table and make a motion, we would have to tee it up now to do that, or you could.
No, we put it on the agenda
Put it
for
on the
next
agenda.
time, and anyway, completely on the agenda right now, we don't have a vote on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Cause I still think it's generally we do recommendations, we typically don't do a vote. So by the moment we do a vote, it should be put on the agenda before.
Yes. Okay, as long as you can put something on the agenda that we can vote on.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is very high level, and I was hoping we would get further along. So on where we go generally here on phase two is, I think we have to do some work to close up some of the feedback and some of a little bit of conflicting interest and information on phase one. Where we go so quickly through, are we having all the same understanding on the different scenarios and the different properties that are earmarked in what kind of order for the one or the other use based on the three working groups, fire, police, public works, and then consolidation. That we have just reconcile it in this round. This can be very quickly going through the main things. Then we have a set of properties also where we what I call secondary properties that are kind of the next in line as a plan B, as a fallback solution. Are we on the same page in this group based on what we learn out of phase one to group these things into kind of primary and secondary properties and recommendations to have that covered. And then there's a lot of leftovers. We can classify that in different groups. Again, that would be the long Excel sheet you got in prep for this. We touched that the next meeting. We can quickly go through. It's like, do we want to consider these groups, or we not consider these groups? Are they quick lefts or rights? And which ones we want to spend more time on or not? To get to a point where we can really think about that. So in parallel, and then in addition, we need understanding and kind of when we look at these different things, what are the uses we want to consider for the different properties, and how do we want to evaluate them? Because our task here is, as you see up there, phase two will address other potential uses, including commercial development, housing, recreation, open space. That's the quote out of the charter. That's what we need to do. So we think, is this the list? Do we be more granular? Do we, let's say, on housing, break it out to restricted housing for the elderly or for affordable housing? And what are criteria sets where we want to measure on this, that we have a common understanding around that. The other part is, if we do that, what kind of data do we have to substantiate our opinion, and are there modeling tools available? We can use at least the usual we did in the past. That the subgroups is that we get a sense of the order of magnitude of what this means. For example, for potential for affordable housing, or potential for general single family houses, or for apartments, or for commercial. And what are the sensitivities on that? And the interesting thing is this, the presentation that is prepared, was prepared for today, but we put it out to next time, is gives a view as what is already there, what are general sensitivities, but in the end, we have to think about what scenarios we want to put through these models and see what our outcome is. Again, we just talked about scenarios. Based on that, we have to build a few scenarios on the options, see what the outcome from the evaluation is, rank them, and in parallel over that, we have to continue our communication. Although all our close to 50 meetings of the whole group and the subgroups were public, and we had public participation. I think now that we have the puzzle pieces somehow sorted and the options there, we saw it today, now people can understand what could potentially happen and what are the pros and cons of it. So we have to be out there right now. We had synchronization, potentially, hopefully, to have something with the League of Women Voters to get things out. But any other additional information session is important. I don't think we have the time to do hearings, and if there's other opinions, we would entertain that. We have to wrap this up in July. I think these specific hearings might be just focused on the work tasks that hopefully come financed out of Article 12, where you look at the fire and police strength, where you look at the public work for the consolidation, and then they use do specific community engagement around these main work streams. But whatever communication parallel we can do while we do phase two, we should do. So that's the high level. of what we have in front of us. And I know you often have additional, you're very process oriented, this time it's my list, but you probably can fill in a few more aspects of what we should do. Yeah.
So there are a few things that in my head that aren't on the list, and everything I'm gonna say here is initial discussions on ... There's like a solid here. So
Yeah.
3 things that are gonna have to be done are prioritization. We have 3 recommendations. We have 3 work streams. We have lots of them. Do we have any sense of what comes first? What should come first? Because that kicks into questions about maybe more data collection and maybe special town meetings. So the prioritization and related to that is sort of phasing and the timeline. And again, it's initial discussions on what do we think, how these things may phase, and then related to all of that, again, initial concepts and capital planning as well. We're not gonna do capital planning because we're missing a lot of information, but initial thoughts on that, phasing, prioritization, those are all things. Should we start that in phase 2? None of them are gonna be finished, but I've been thinking about what comes
For being too,
and just if it, because the 3 work streams, and I've had the internal debate, I could, this was a debating club, I could be the champion of any one of these 3 work streams as being the most important thing, phasing. But as a group, I think we have to figure out what's the most important thing, the most practical phasing to do it, and somebody has to do that sooner than later. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm a little bit concerned right now that I feel we're being a little bit ambitious about what we're trying to accomplish. And we only have a few more meetings and we've got town meeting in the middle of that. And as you know, the select board is discussing how we want to move forward from a structural point of view. What kind of committees do we have? So given that we don't know that yet, and what that work would be done by the new steering committee or whatever we want to call it, that we haven't actually outlined that yet. We don't know what this committee should be doing to feed into that.
Yeah.
So, and when I get like that with when in committee work and I don't know what we should do, I usually look at the charge, go back to the charge. And I don't have this in my packet, so
that's what we charge for phase 2. Phase 2 will
Okay,
address
so let's
other
look at the charge.
potential uses, including commercial development, housing, and recreation / open space. That's the direct quote out of the charge.
Well, we actually started on something done, right?
Thank you. We're late for it.
Which we never got to.
Well, we covered a lot of housing, considerations.
well, I think it's, okay, we're people, right? And we worked really hard and we did what we could, okay? And as we went along, we learned some things and we learned that maybe we were a little bit too aggressive or ambitious, or we just bit off more than we could chew when we wrote that charge. So now is a good chance maybe to be realistic about what can we really do that will be useful to the subsequent work that's going to be done according to what the select board decides will be the group moving forward. And that's, I don't, this is too,
I think that's a reasonable answer, that the group I think, laudably accomplish its mission on the phase 1 in the charge. And once we get finalized amongst ourselves, what the recommendations on the big 3 are and move those along, boy, that's something to be proud of and well done and good luck to you. But it's going to be a successor. It's going to be a successor activity to get to the issues which were in phase 2 of this charge. And there are too many other things going on and too many other considerations. So, well, you've got, the MCI is what happens to them, and just like there's nothing wrong with saying, all right, well, let's do a timeout and select board look at what the way to carry forward what would have been phase 2 here with whatever you want to do now. But need not be this one.
I still go, I think. for me-
And that comes a lot for me, because I'm only here to do phase two.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yes, we heard that before, exactly, yeah.
It says it's a disappointment.
So, I think.
Go ahead.
So first of all, it's up to the select board to say, okay, forget about that. It's, we can only ask the select board to consider it, forget about it. I think very important is we have to reconcile phase one.
Yes.
I think that is, because we have phase one report that has still a few, why not loose ends and,
Yes.
prioritization, timelines.
Prioritization timeline,
And
yes.
some conflicting findings, and we have to reconcile them. That's very, very important, because this is what is, no matter what is handed over to, assuming Article 12 will be approved, to the working streams that are funded out of that. Yeah, that's important. But I also think at least we should have some kind of record, this kind of what, and document what are the leftovers are. Yeah, and even if it's a list of
Okay.
questions.
That's fair, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
That is because there are plenty of leftovers.
Yes.
And better have that documented so that the town select board understands. The incompleteness of the work, and I agree, we achieved a lot. I would not have dreamed that we could achieve what we achieved in the time period.
You put on a light bulb in my head. I think we should develop scope of work for the next group that handles this. How do we suggest to proceed with moving this forward? Which kind of prioritization, kind of piece into some of the things we're talking about, but I think it'd be great value, because if there's a new group starting, they're gonna take this report, how do we start doing that? I think we're in a good position to recommend how to proceed beyond July.
So Ben and I have batted this ball back and forth across the net a little bit, and you know, I think my position was pretty clear from the outset that I was not optimistic we would ever get to phase two, right? Because there was an outlook here. And I think we're a little bit out of runway is my position, right? We have dealt with what we can deal with, given the data that we have, given the bandwidth that staff has, so on and so forth. And I think it would be reasonable and executable to get to the point where we continue to determine what the handoff looks like. And I think we've already started that. Well, yeah, but I think that's what we've been doing all along, is saying,
Yes, what the
we need a
handoff looks
committee
like.
to do this. We need a committee to do that. So we need 3 committees, whether the public works one is wrapped into MCI in some way, but we need one on municipal consolidation. We probably need one on public safety. And then there's a 4th umbrella group, I don't know how it would be specified, that continues with the broader issues of town land management strategy, disposition strategy, fiscal impact of disposition strategy, so on and so forth, right? But I think we could very effectively, while we, as Sven rightly points out, reconciling the issues around the three different groups where they conflict. They don't conflict everywhere, but there are some conflicts that have to be resolved. But I think we could very handily and reasonably report to the select board with a fairly well specified set of next steps. With regard to an implementation schedule, I think that one perspective is capital budgeting, right? People are trying to figure out, if we want to pay for one, how do we go at one and then do the next? But it's not simply a matter of capital budgeting, because there's a sequencing of studies and reports that would have to feed into that capital budgeting. So, but I do think that we could easily produce a very preliminary Gantt chart of what simultaneous activities might look like for the next 5 to 10 years around all 4 of those projects, with the 4th being this new thing of sort of town land management strategy. So I think that's quite reasonable. And by the way, some aspects of phase 2, which not only deals with alternative land uses outside of municipal facilities, but also deals with some of the properties that were on our opportunity parcel list. So 2229, for example, Peabody if Peabody is now no longer under active consideration for, say, municipal consolidation or public works, then, you know, what are the ideas for Peabody? Is it, that can even come down to, is it residential A, residential B, et cetera. So some of those aspects of phase two, I think, would be addressed in a very preliminary manner as part of these next steps. So I think we can wrap a bow on this fairly nicely and within timeline, as long as we're very careful about over-promising. And I'm just thinking about 2229, for example, Paul, I believe there's an acquisition decision timeframe with 2229 as well, right?
There it is,
It's not super urgent, right? But
it's kind of, yeah.
so there, you know, and so maybe that would be a subset of the activities under a broader town land management strategy.
Well, the acquisition decision is related to, but separate from the planning.
Agreed.
I mean, if maybe the select board will decide we can't acquire unless we know exactly what we can do with it, or the select board could say we don't want to acquire it, or the select board could say we want to acquire it, but we're gonna bank it. We will have land and we'll figure out what to do with the labor.
Well, that actually kind of makes me circle back to this. And I wonder if there's a way that we could maybe redraft this to address each of these four topics, and with an introductory paragraph about, you know, completing the work of the land use working group, and then allowing the select board to have monies available to complete these four categories of future work. And then having a paragraph on each one, because each has kind of distinct studies. So we might be able to just give some ideas about the subject matter of the studies. We didn't have enough lead time to actually get cost figures, but I think that might be a way that we could also solve this problem, maybe, Sven, I don't know what you think, but.
Yeah, I think I need a little bit separate this from. Yeah.
From the broader.
From this.
Yeah. I'm just.
Yeah. But I think so, what I hear is more or less a few things of that, so we have to reconcile and wrap up the results of phase one in this group. We have
Say,
to.
what does that exactly mean, and say reconcile?
That
I think I know what it means, but.
Yeah, so making sure that based on the subgroup findings, we are all on the same page on what the findings are. And some, for example, the discussion we had today, the fields is, do we want to deviate from the finding? So what is our group view on the options to prioritization? Then for example, Ripley is a conflicting property. Because it's in the public work side and also in the municipal conservation side. So how do we think about that? Do we have an opinion, or do we leave it then to future Concordians to deal with this? So we have to go quickly through the main things and identify the major leftovers here. Yeah. So
I know what keep this thing.
As part of reconciliation, we have had very minimal public outreach through this whole process. As I think today. So I wonder if you want to do reconciliation and have a report that still has not really touched the community or had input from the community, and if that's really what we want to hand over, or if in this 3-month period or whatever we have, we want to build in something that at least we have made some effort to get a little more feedback than we have. It's a question.
Yeah, I would recommend, hopefully Article 12 passes and we use some of those funds to get professional help with community outreach. I don't know if we have the skills to do that.
So
I think it's important. I think it's important. I think it's not just important. We can't do anything without it. We have to have community input. If we get some kind of a straw to put out to the community, I think that would be more productive as far as hearing what people want to see the direction of the town. where they think the town wants to be 20 years from now, or 10 years. Yeah.
I guess it's, I mean, if. Point taken, if we try and do that ourselves.
Yeah.
we'll probably just mess it up.
Yeah.
And then we hand that over in terms of if there's negative feedback, but at some point,
See, what I
think we
envision
need
is,
to make a
you know, that we're-
conscious
So there's
decision
a
about
there's a
this.
good rule of thumb in
Yeah.
city planning about when you go to the public.
Okay,
And that is, you go to the public when you have information to offer them that helps them make a decision. At this point, and one of the reasons we didn't build it into the process at this stage is because we would be going to the public and asking them questions, they would be asking us questions that we cannot answer. Because we simply do not have the data and the analysis yet, which is why we're not making formal recommendations. So for example, right, we've got decisions decisions, wrong word. We've made some, done some analysis around public safety, right? And that's mainly based on, again, volunteers sort of going and looking at our fire stations, other fire stations. I ran some benchmarking on costs, very, very simple calculations. So if I went out to the community and I said, where do you think we should put our fire station? Well, I'm just gonna get hammered with a bunch of questions that if I don't have a response time study, there's no point going out, right? So the same thing for public, because you're going to get more questions than you can answer. And then we are positioning volunteers. And normally who's positioned in a public meeting? It's staff or a consultant. And the committee members often sit to the side. So we would be putting volunteers in front of a large public meeting and asking them to answer questions for which they have no consulting background. There's no, meaningful in-house data. I think that it's an incredibly important principle, but this is an exploratory piece of work that is very, very preliminary, and there will be and should be opportunities to engage the public when we have meaningful information to share. More so than our meetings, by the way, which are.
Slightly different view. We do have to go through some reconciliation and then take things off the table. But at that point, aren't we gonna have three straw men that have been well thought out, that we can get feedback on the straw man? Maybe that's one meeting or 3 meetings, like we have a proposal, municipal consolidation. I'd like to get some feedback on what we propose. Or
So
some
the first
feedback,
question that comes back to you is
some
what's it
feedback
gonna
on the
cost?
gaps. What?
The first question that's gonna come back to you is what's it gonna cost? You don't know, because we don't have the study done.
We have some preliminary estimates.
Order of magnitude, I would go in front of
Cost-
with order of magnitude.
Very preliminary.
So you're saying we can't go to the public until we have all our eyes?
I would have better
No,
numbers.
but there's a range of the level of confidence in the numbers, and
Yeah.
I'd say that right now. I would need a stronger level of confidence before I put those numbers in front of somebody to make a decision.
Taking that, what we have said is unlikely. With additional information in our recommendation would change. The cost of that may change, but
Yeah.
the recommendation, the direction will not change.
Yeah, but if the question is, what's the cost, or we don't, we're gonna be peppered with really good questions, and we don't have really good answers.
but
Well, we don't have the cost ends. That's true.
Well,
Maybe those are.
really presenting that we have made some preliminary findings or observations.
Yeah.
That we in fact have deficiencies in public safety. We need to remedy and strengthen our public works department. And we need to think about consolidating our 18 offices into a smaller, more efficient, modernized, to serve the workforce of the future, not the past. So that's, I think, all the message.
So that's a
And
one-way.
that's what we.
That's a one-way.
That's a one-way communication, we can do that, the report does it, but it like.
report does
That's a
it.
legal board presentation,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yes,
That-
and that's all I'm saying is that.
Oh, we can do that.
That's very.
But
good.
I think
I think that's part of reconciliation.
Okay,
or
Okay.
bringing this all
I think
together
the-
is to be able to say this.
Mary, I would like
No.
feedback from the public on these general ideas. You know, we're getting some initial feedback, why not get feedback? Yes, we don't have all the answers. But conceptually, we've gone beyond we need to do consolidation to a tangible strawman. So why not get feedback on that? And you made a recommendation that the main fire station should be in West Concord. It's not, right?
West Concord, possibly.
Okay, but it's not totally open-ended, so you can get some feedback on that, and we could say, we haven't determined exactly what. And the fire, I
Well,
think.
I would think if we have consultants, they're going to.
Yes.
What, they're
Yes.
going to look at our assumptions, they're gonna
The
test
work
them.
that agency did for the MCI, okay, I thought that was so professionally done. People felt heard, it was fun, it was well attended, they had a really good results. I'm hoping that we can get that quality of community input into our decision making. That's the quality I want.
I agree, well, that was different, that agency sort of got the initial input before there was any straw man out there. They developed 3 scenarios based on that input. We have this.
Well, they had combinations of scenarios. They had the way they presented it, they had combinations of, but anyway, I really want this done professionally.
Yeah.
We've got.
Yeah, just, I'm hearing this and it's challenging, which is why you're all sort of circling around trying to figure out next step. But I will tell you, the communication that agency did was accelerated by design. It was funded, was it 400,000 or whatever?
It was 400,000.
$400,000. It was primarily communication and messaging in a way that's certainly more than we could do for this next phase, but that was it. It wasn't code evaluations or detailed assessments of sites or real estate considerations. $400,000 got you a great communication strategy, and we're talking about $600,000 for a lot more.
For everything.
And so the challenge is, it is so complex, and we continue to bounce between specificity and very general. And we're bouncing up and down, and nobody's satisfied. Because if people who want specifics aren't getting it, the generalists are feeling overwhelmed. And it's $600,000 that we're challenged saying, when we know that the cost of the construction is over $100 million. And I'm really challenged with saying, 600,000 is about 0.5% of this investment for preliminary planning. And we're challenged making that case, which is pretty remarkable, because I think we're making it more complex. 0.5% for preparation is not much when you're talking about 10 to 15% for the permitting design, element. So it's difficult.
Yeah, let me go back to our report. Maybe I'm totally naive about this. We have a report. And we may want to revise that. And maybe it is one-way communication. And you could say, well, the public has our report. But how many people read the report or know the report exists? Wouldn't we be better off socializing that?
You do the report, a draft report, you have a public hearing on it. I think that's
right.
A reasonable way to get input with all the pieces there, because it won't be the last time that there's a public hearing. And it's a very preliminary process. But just sitting here today, from the information that Alan shared a moment ago, I learned something, $100 million. Wow. That ought to be front and center of any report that comes out of here, if we are aware of what the potential cost could be, because that's what the voters were gonna know. Even the town meeting voters are gonna ask, we're asking for $600,000 this year. I think somewhere along the line, they should be told, well, the potential costs of all of these facility needs is, however many hundreds of $1 million.
I think Mark talked about it.
He did.
Talked about it. That was.
You do.
clearly.
So wait, just this $100 million, that was just thrown out there, right? Is that for everything in totality?
Because we haven't even added those
yeah.
numbers up yet,
So
so
I
that's.
think we need to do the investment to figure out those numbers more precisely, because that will be.
in the final.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why we need
Right.
more money.
Yes, right, I think, yeah.
That's where it's.
Disagree with that.
It's a chicken and egg.
Okay, we're jumping back and forth.
So
between the
observation,
article-
we're throwing around some big numbers that we really, even such estimates of ballparking. That, I'm not comfortable throwing around $100 million numbers in public here. It may end up there, but we have to work to get to
Yeah,
that
but
number.
everyone who reads
And-
our draft report and adding up the numbers is getting to that order of magnitude.
Yeah.
And we provide you, that report provides that information
It does.
as it should. Because we've looked at other facilities and other communities similar size, and we know these values. There's order of
It's
magnitude.
in the phase one report.
Well, let's reconcile that.
Exactly.
Let's all
That's
talk
that
about
part.
next meeting.
So,
Exactly.
so I
What
think
that
we have,
number is, so we can.
So-
we are having 355. So let's you and I synchronize on organization of the remainder. Two select board members have to think about if we give us a little bit more leeway on phase two.
What do you mean leeway?
Well, you said this is overly ambitious to.
Yes, I
Yeah,
did. I
yeah.
just said that.
So,
Yes.
so that is, do you need, I don't know, if you need to revisit the charter or if you just get it formally or you're not fulfilling the charter. So that's, yeah,
I'll take the action and talk to the chair.
okay. And, I think next time,
Leeway in scope,
What?
timing, leeway in
The scope of the charge.
scope, okay.
We're wondering, do we have to be formal, rewrite the charge, or can we simply casually deliver what we could have delivered in the time that was allowed? And I'm hoping that's the path we take.
yeah,
So
and,
see how-
and I think it's, what's clear, what
Exactly.
what is clear is, at least for the next time, you have to spend the time to reconcile phase one. To have that done as much as possible. And then, see what else is realistic in time frame. And we also know that there's a lot of hearings, town meeting prep and so on. We have one public comment.
Thank you so much for taking it. Thank you for this discussion. I just wanted to briefly, just as a layperson citizen, just reiterate my longtime thoughts about needing more emergency shelter locations, one in the west, one in the east side. And also to raise the option, which I'm sure some of you have already considered, nevertheless, of perhaps consolidating town offices in two locations and, along with shelter, I mean, in case that's just another approach, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we're exhausted.
We are.
Yeah. We have some work in front of us next time.
But we should take a minute and really congratulate ourselves on what we have done. No, seriously.
Absolutely.
We've done.
Yes.
That phase one report was great, and the presentation to the FinCom and Select Board was very good, so.
I would like to say a member of FinCom asked if we had a longer report. Remember that?
Yeah, but he hasn't read the report. With that, I would like to adjourn the meeting.
No moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.